Hello, Region Niners. Welcome to Region Nine's podcast, a forum for emergency managers to get their news, share their open discussion, and talk about the industry. So, welcome on this special edition of Meet the Candidates, a special podcast for us to learn more about the IAEM presidential candidates that are happening due to, congratulations to our current president, Todd DeVoe, who is moving on up, going for the IAEM USA second vice president elect. And now we need someone to fill those shoes. So, we are your hosts, Ismar Garcia and Jenny Maradiaga? No.
Maradiaga.
Madriaga. Got it. Maradiaga. So we're going to get it. We're going to get it. We're going to say it in the full name, too, with accents y todo. So thank you so much. We're your hosts. We're IAEM USA Region 9 Regions Talk Podcast. IAEM Region 9 serves Arizona. Make sure I'm going to read this. Arizona, California, Hawaii, Nevada, Pacific Trust, and the territories, including American Samoa, Guam, and Northern Mariana Islands. So I am going to read a little bit from my phone just to make sure that I get these highlights out before we bring in our candidates. So one is we will take questions from the audience. Please do watch the IAM Region 9 Presidential Candidates Forum that happened, where our two candidates were able to share about themselves, why they decided to run for the presidential seat, what they bring to the table, as well as addressing mental health issues, addressing transparency in our association, and their commitment to outreach. We want to let you know that voting has begun and will close November 1st at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. There is one vote per voting member, and your individual vote or link has been sent to you via email. And that email subject line reads as IAEM-USA Region 9 Special Election Ballot. So you're able to use your individual link to make your vote, and I hope you're able to make your vote and make your voices known in who you would like to lead our region. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our candidates, Presidential Candidate John Shear and Presidential Candidate Dan Scott.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
No dancing.
No dancing.
No dancing? All
right.
Right.
Throw on a hula skirt and start going down with us?
We'll do no dancing, but we do want to take the time to say thank you for coming on and agreeing to our special podcast to give us a little bit of the highlights. We are definitely going to keep in the back of our minds the fact that you've already answered like what you bring to the table and who you are. So this is a more in-depth type of, interview, if you will, but this is the opportunity for us to learn a little bit more about yourself. So I wanted to take the time to say thank you before Jenny asks the questions.
Wow. So as we go into these discussion questions, the first one that I want to jump into is give you a platform to tell us about a time where your judgment has been tested in a crisis, and what do you want us to appreciate about your judgment? So let's start off with John to see if he wants to go ahead and take a stab at this first question.
No, you got to start with the real easy questions, right? It wasn't like, are you a cat or a dog person? It was just right into the, tell me about a time when your judgment was tested under crisis. So for me, one of the most challenging kind of experiences I've gone through is probably COVID, with the pandemic response. We really had to determine how we could take care of our staff and respond to the clients and be able to just continue to move forward. There was so much that was really uncertainty about what the expectations were. I've been doing pandemic planning for 20 plus years, and so I kind of knew what the challenge of that particular scenario was, but the things that we were trying to figure out were just dealing with the unknown. And I feel like I have the ability to deal with the unknown just because of my background and experience in the military. The fact that I was trained as a bomb tech, trained as an hazmat tech, we're thrown these kind of scenarios all the time where we're dealing with the unknown. So what I tend to do is to be able to look at those type of scenarios, figure out what the unknowns are, and then try to figure out what the path forward should be. I just feel like I actually kind of enjoy situations that require a little bit of a firefighting, as opposed to we know exactly what's going to happen next day or next week. I mean, with pandemic, we didn't even know what the operational periods were. We didn't know any of those type of input or decisions that need to get done, and we were, helping to run the COVID-19 response for the state of Hawaii. And so we were working, 7 days a week, 6 to 9 p.m. doing meetings and coordination with leaders. And to me, it's just what I bring to the table is that crisis experience and ability to address those kind of issues.
Thanks, John. That's so insightful of your experience during that time. I can definitely attest to that. The uncertainty, it's really what challenges someone with their judgment. So thank you for sharing that. Now on to you, Daniel. What about you? Share a time with that.
I think for me, I would have to say when I first kind of really stepped outside my comfort zone and I left the job I had been at for 10 years. I was already been emergency manager for about 7 years at that point for university, and I moved to Texas. And it was right around Hurricane Harvey. So we had the hurricane. I was new in the office. I was junior in the office. And then we had to make decisions and had to be talking to the media, had to be talking to city council, had to be talking to the county council and the county judge and making decisions on how we were going to do things, implementing sheltering. And so a lot of decisions had to be made. A lot of ultimately we had to convince people to do things, and being new to the area and having to bring my expertise in there on that I actually knew what I was doing in this situation, and operating a 2-week long sheltering operation that ultimately was the aftermath, or in conjunction with the hurricanes that was taking place, Hurricane Harvey down south of us, and we were dealing with everybody who was evacuating. So we were having to deal with all those, and how we were going to house them, how we were going to feed them, how we were going to equip them with the things that they needed. So it took a lot of engagement, a lot of strategic planning throughout. Actually, while we were building the airplane, we were actually building the airplane as we were flying it, so to speak, because they kind of just the way it happened, and then getting everything done and getting everything we needed and getting all the people involved and everything that went along with that, with news interviews and everything that happened. It was definitely put me outside my comfort zone, but it also made me expand my thinking a little bit more in a much bigger sense. I came from California in Fresno, where I was working for the university. Never had to deal with a hurricane before. Never had to deal with something on this scale before, and so it was definitely it pushed me to my limits. But I was already outside my comfort zone because I was in a new place, had a new job with new coworkers and new people that I was working with. So if I had to pinpoint a time, that would be it.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that with us, Daniel. Like, honestly, you got thrown into the trenches right in prime time. So I'm glad that you're here, both of you, to share those experiences and how your judgment was really put to test during a crisis. Now, going on to the next question, Isamar, I'll send it over to you.
Of course. I did have one quick thing, though. Is it Dan or Daniel?
Well, my name is Daniel, but everybody calls me Dan.
What would you prefer?
Dan is what most people call me.
Is that what you would like to go by?
You call me Dan. That's fine.
Dan.
Yeah.
Got it.
All righty.
So I object. I think it should be called Daniel because that's what's on his.
That's what the name tag says.
People call me Jonathan. I'm like, no, it's John. Why are you calling me Jonathan?
Where did you get that from? All righty. So since we started with John, we're going to go with Dan for the second question. Many hands make light work. With a shortage of hands, please describe your approach in engaging our members to foster more Region 9 volunteers.
Well, I think you just kind of pointed out, yeah, many hands make light work, but it's getting those hands that is actually can be the problem. I think there's no lack of individuals out there who want to participate and who want to be involved. I think what there's a lack of education on how to get involved and what we need help with and how often we need that help. And ultimately, for me, it's identifying those who not only want to help, but are actually going to take the steps to help, but identifying their strengths and where they want to help. A lot of really what gets people engaged and gets to keep them engaged is identifying what they're good at and what they want to be doing, and then capitalizing on that. A lot I feel would help is if we were more consistent in our interaction and engagement, and more information that we're putting out on a more consistent basis. We ask people to do things. We ask people to partake in like this event with the being able to watch this live, or the candidates forum that we had. But it's making sure that we are putting the information out in all the areas in which people may utilize that, whether it be email, social media, whether it's text, whatever it may be. We find these ways and we engage them in that way. But it's doing more than one thing. It's not just emailing. It's not just doing a podcast. It's not just doing some social media. It's doing all those things in conjunction with one another and consistently. That really brings the knowledge there, the ability for people to know what's happening in the region and what is needed. So for me, it's just a consistent level of engagement and raising it to a bar where we're actually reaching the people that we need to reach. But then when we reach them, that we're keeping them engaged, that we're not going so long in between the things that we're doing so that they fall off. I feel like that's a big part of what we've experienced in the area, is that we go so far and few in between and some of the things that we do, that we lose people in the process because they think, well, when's the next time we're going to meet, or when's the next event, or how does this benefit me? And I want to keep people engaged and do more for that. That's how ultimately for me, just the level that I am doing things now on just a day-to-day basis is just a level to ultimately keep people engaged in the process so that they benefit and we benefit from them.
Thank you. I would also like to point out to our listeners and our viewers that these questions are surprise questions. Our candidates did not know the questions going into this podcast, and they are authentically answering it. As soon as you hear it, they hear it. It is the real deal, and they're answering just as they're taking in the question. So John, on to you. Many hands make light work. With a shortage of hands, please describe your approach in engaging our members to foster more Region 9 volunteers.
It is a really good question. I mean, one of the acronyms I learned recently was STT. So it's the same 10 or 20 people that do everything when it comes to these volunteer engagements. And so, we're working on a project now trying to revamp how the Medical Reserve Corps volunteers are being used in Hawaii. And one of the things we look at is getting a better feel for who they are. Where are they providing? Are they retirees? Are they active? Are they in the medical profession, non-medical profession? So I think the starting point is to get a better feel for who the Region 9 members are. I think one of the big challenges is getting more members because I really feel like, I just had some informal discussions with local emergency management officials here. Like, hey, I'd love to join IAEM, but I'm too busy. I just don't have the time, don't have the bandwidth. So then we get them to join, and the first thing they do when they join is like, oh, and by the way, we'd like you to volunteer to run our membership or run this or run that. And so I think we've got to get a better feel for who the current members are, what is the value proposition that they're getting out of it, establish some metrics right up front that says what is the level of engagement they're looking to do, and that's going to be on a scale. Some people are going to want to be engaged on a really frequent basis, as Daniel was talking about. Others are looking at what are the type of things they might only be looking at jumping in, once a quarter. So getting that survey out to participants and saying what is the type of thing they're looking to do, where are they at right now in the field? Are they local? Are they state? Are they federal? Nonprofits, private sector? I think that really will help to get a feel for what they want to provide to the organization, and then we can target that a little bit better. So we're trying to figure out, what is it that they can provide. I tend to look at some volunteer efforts as not really tied to the person's expertise and skill sets. So we'll say, hey, let's go out and clean a beach. Well, you're telling someone's a social media expert to go clean a beach, where they could be helping to revamp your website or really work on your social media engagement. So, part of it's putting together what I like to call like a job jar. And you're saying, here's all the things that people can help with. And some of those would be very discrete tasks where they could be a short project that they could work on. Others would be over an extended period of time in some of the committees that we have established. And for those, I think one of the most important things is to have two people. Don't just rely on one person volunteering to provide support. We're all volunteers. We're all busy. If it's just one person doing it, it makes it real challenging. And so trying to double up or even triple up if you can, so that you can share that load for that responsibility.
Thank you so much, both of you, for the answers. On to the next question.
All right, so the third question that we'll be asking you is, what issue or issues do you identify as the challenges or problems for IAEM Region 9 that need to be addressed under your tenure as president? So in short, what, in your opinion, needs to be fixed? So let's start off with Dan this time.
I think it'll go back to level of engagement and partnerships that we have with our other partners. It's not just about IAEM in the region; it's about all the other partners that we need to be interacting with as well. We need to be interacting with the state associations, and there are associations we could actually partner with in some of the events, some of the training, some of the engagement and volunteering as well at their events, and they can be volunteering at our events. We could go to their events, they can go to our events. It's a level of cooperation and partnership that needs to be built. And I think Todd was doing a great job at starting that process. And if wherever we go, whether there's Dan or whether it's John that's sitting at that office, my goal is to help Region 9 continue on that form so that we can build those partnerships and we can be bringing more training, more engagement, and more levels of cooperation and partnership to the region. So I think that's where we're lacking right now. And it's not for the lack of trying; it's just for the lack of consistency. And because we're dealing with, and I don't want to say dealing with, I want to work with California, with Arizona, with Nevada, with Hawaii, with these areas that we could be partnering with to actually be better across the board in Region 9.
Wow, well said, Dan. Thank you so much for that insight. All right, on to you, John.
Yeah, I think this ties back to what I was talking about before in terms of getting a feel for the current members. One of the big challenges, I agree with Dan, is engagement. You need to make this worthwhile for people. You need to make sure that they want to be a part of the organization. You'll find that a lot of us we're members of Team Rubicon volunteer organization. We're members of Red Cross, members of the Habitat for Humanity, Humane Society, whatever. There's all these kind of things that are tugging on our responsibilities, and that's on top of a full-time job. And so it's really trying to figure out what are the drivers that want us to kind of pull together. And what I look at as a benefit of IEM is it's the networking opportunities, it's the professional development opportunities, it's the fact that you're building this community to further the profession. I kind of liken it to like a CPA. You're looking at as an accountant. There's a lot of accountants out there, but there are a few that have kind of taken that next step to be a CPA and give back to the profession. I think that's what we can do with IEM. I think there's a huge opportunity here to reach out to a lot of these local and state and even federal emergency managers, nonprofits, private sector. There are emergency managers all over the place, but they don't need to know that IEM exists. They don't know what the value proposition is. They don't know how the organization would benefit them. And so I think a lot of this is ramping up our outreach, ramping up those engagements, and doing roadshows and talking to them, stopping by a local EM office, giving them a presentation saying this is what the organization can do for you, giving sessions on CEM and AEM certifications on a regular basis so people are engaged and can further their professional development. So a lot of this is really, making sure that we're giving back to the community and giving back to IEM. And I think that's one of the main areas that Region 9 needs to continue to work on.
Thank you so much for that insight, John. I really appreciate it. And we appreciate you both, Dan and John, for giving us those insights. Thank you. On to the last question. Isamar?
So I want to kind of preface this a little bit with when we had Yuri, and that's where I started volunteering, was when Yuri was our president. Yuri had this idea of crawl, walk, run. And with that model, Todd then kind of definitely championed on Yuri's idea of crawl, walk, run. And Todd was very good on, all right, cool, we've crawled, let's get to walking. And in that same kind of model, or not, this is where you'll tell us, what is your vision? Are we sticking to the crawl, walk, run, where now you are coming in, we're running? And then what does your vision look like? What can you please explain to us your vision and how did I put them? What are the keys to translating your vision for Region 9's future into action? So what's your overall vision? And how are you getting us there? Or how would you like to get us there if elected for president? And since we went with Dan the last time, we'll go with John this time.
You really gave us some really easy questions to address. I deeply appreciate this, like off the top of the dome, so we'll see how that works. But I am HCEEP trained, and so I understand the crawl, walk, run methodology. But one of the things that I've been trying to kind of get across more recently is that it's really hard for any organization to magically be moving from crawl to walk to run because of the turnover that takes place and because of the changes and curveballs that get thrown. And so, like for health departments who are required to submit a multi-year preparedness plan, and that multi-year plan is over 5 years. And so we're trying to figure out what are we going to do 4 or 5 years. And if you look at that crawl, walk, run methodology, that means you're not going to do the run exercise until the 5th year. So that means for 4 years, you're just accepting the fact that you're only going to be walking or crawling. And so my recommendation is to kind of get away from that to a certain extent and say, hey, what we need to focus on is the value proposition for the members. We need to make sure that we have built a strong organization and a reason for people to join the organization, a vision, and it's seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. What does that look like for them? And for me, it's building up the professional development. It's building up the networking opportunities. It's building up the membership so they can look to the left and look to the right and see someone that looks like them, see someone that's kind of walked through the same issues that they've had to deal with and that they can lean on. I incredibly value going to the annual conference, getting a chance to meet the other members from throughout the country. And I've had a chance to lean on them throughout the years and over, a dozen conferences that I've been to where you're saying, oh, that's a great idea that I heard that they worked on in their jurisdiction and I can bring back. And I think that's one of the unique value propositions that IAEM brings. And my idea is to continue that with Region 9 and say, hey, what can Region 9 do? How can we move the profession forward within our region? And what are the different things we can do to make that happen? And a lot of that's about project management. A lot of that's about the team that you build and you're working with so that everybody has clear checklists and plans and documentation within the region. So that if somebody does have to step away and run a podcast like this, you actually know what that looks like. And here's the 5 steps to follow. So it makes it a lighter lift for the volunteers that are providing that kind of support.
Well, thank you so much. We definitely love our SOPs. You're speaking to the right audience here. Dan, same question for you. What is your vision and what are the key steps to attaining your vision if elected?
For me, it boils down to just continued growth. Just continue. We've grown over the years. We're continuing, and just as long as we can build that continuing level of growth, but with purpose, right? And I'm a fan of the crawl, walk, run. And I know that I enjoy that when I teach and when I train people. But it boils down to what level they are currently at, and we had to identify that. And so that would, for me, it would come with the level of an assessment evaluation on where we currently are, who we have involved, who we want to have involved, and then identifying what we're going to do. There may be areas where we technically are crawling, where we have no presence whatsoever. There are other areas where we can just start doing it. Like we learn by doing and we get better by making mistakes. So, but a lot of what, for me and for those who know me, I'm all about doing application. And it's all about learning and having that professional development. I love that from John, that going to develop, be able to do that professional growth and development and that networking. But that theory is actually applying it and actually doing it, doing the thing, right? And when it boils down to my little thing that I say about emergency management all the time, everybody's saying how young emergency managers, we're still in our infancy. Well, we're like Baby Yoda, right? We're like 50 years old, and we need to start taking more chances, more risk, more outside of our comfort zone. And that comes from from that, taking that action when we're ready to or not. We need to identify it, say we're going to do it, then go do it, and then learn from that and move and make it better the next time. Whether it's good or bad or indifferent, it's growth. So my goal for the region, we can't really grow the region, but we can grow the people in the region. And my goal is to grow the people in the region, grow the association, grow Region 9 members, grow those who are involved, and grow overall membership to IAEM overall.
Well, continuous improvement. Again, you're speaking to the right audience here. I love that these are your answers. So thank you both for answering so honestly, so intently, and very authentically. Alrighty, we said it was already the last question. However, Jenny.
So we want to give you both the opportunity to share one key takeaway for the Region 9ers. So let's start off with Dan this time. What's one key item that you want the region to know about you and your presidency for this opportunity?
Well, I appreciate it. Just before I start, just thank you for doing this. Thank you for having this forum with me and John on. And I appreciate your effort and appreciate the questions, even though they were not easy, and for not having seen them prior. So I will be holding this against you. But I want you to know that as a president, I would be forgiving. But overall, my goal, just one takeaway for me, is I'm all about service. It just whether I win or I don't win, I will be involved in Region 9. I will be serving Region 9. I'll be serving IAEM, and I'll be serving the people. I'm a mentor. My goal is to help grow people. So overall, if you take one thing away from me and what it is that I'll bring to what it is that we're going to be doing here, is service.
Lovely. Thank you for that, Dan. Now on to John. What is your key takeaway for the Region 9ers?
Well, again, mahalo for hosting the forum. As Daniel mentioned, I think it was a lot of curveball questions, which is always good to have. I think one of the key things I bring is just the dedication to the profession. It is one of those things where it is not an easy profession. There's all different. It constantly stuns me, the breadth and depth of what we're doing. I just got off a phone call talking to somebody about an oil spill exercise. And then earlier in the day, we're talking about strategic planning for homeland defense versus civil support efforts and homeland security. That's the kind of thing that really jazzes me up about the profession, and the fact that we can have that broad spectrum of working with higher education, working with continuity of operations planning, you name it, all that falls within the umbrella of emergency management. And I just have that dedication to further the profession. And let's continue to make sure that people understand the challenges of the profession, the op tempo and the stress that everybody's under. And all it takes is one incident, one disaster, and all of those plans you had for that entire quarter are gone. For the next 6 months might be gone. And we found that here where we're planning. We had a workshop all set for October, right before the Maui wildfires, and then all of a sudden Maui wildfires happen, and then you're pushing everything back 6 to 9 months. And you're seeing the same thing happening with hurricanes, Helene and Milton, and it's just one of those things where that's what the profession has to deal with. We have to be resilient to be able to respond to those type of things, and a lot of that resilience really can be built now within the profession, so that we're able to increase that professionalism, make sure that the people have got the tools and knowledge, skills, and abilities that they need to survive and to thrive.
Thank you so much for those last key words that you all shared. Once again, thank you, Dan. Thank you, John, for being here with us. And I'll pass it on to Isamar to finish it up.
Awesome. Yes, thank you. This has been very insightful. And again, thank you for the authenticity. Regardless of how we vote, we're all on the same team. We're here to move Region 9 forward and treat, humanize each other and make sure that we're in each other's court, and we can call, anyone one phone call away, phone a friend. So we're all on the same team. Thank you to our candidates. While we close out our podcast, I do want to make sure that everyone votes. Reminder, the voting ends November 1st. So that is going to be happening very soon, and that is 5 p.m. Eastern time. And with that, I wanted to also thank Jenny for being on the podcast, and our Brian behind the scenes. I don't know where he's going to pop out, if he pops out, but thank you so much, Brian, for hosting this special podcast for Region 9, the Meet the Candidates, and as well as for Stitch Radio. So just a reminder, if you haven't already, add us on our socials, on our Substack, and keep on rocking, Region 9. We appreciate you.